Since our last public meeting. Apologize for that. My name is Dan Rankin. I'm one of the partners of the Darrington Collaborative. I'm co-chair with, sorry that he can't be here tonight, John Owen with Pew Charitable Trust. And I'll turn this over to Sally. Are we going off the agenda, Sally?
We're good. Hi, everyone. I'm Sally Bernstein, the coordinator for the collaborative. We're going to start the virtual meeting tonight with the collaborative video that was produced last year.
Of constant change, and really that is resilience. Diversity in plants and animals and landscapes builds resilience in the forest, and also by providing opportunities to our youth builds resilience in the youth as well. The main goals of the collaborative are to boost the health of the community and ecosystems in the Darrington Ranger District, Darrington area.
My name's Dan Rankin. I've lived in Darrington all my life. I've been mayor of Darrington. This is my 8th year. I was the mayor here in 2014 during the SR 530 landslide. And that's kind of where this journey into collaboration got its start. The creation of the Darrington Collaborative was extremely important in how this community went forward. It was really important to not only involve community members like the timber industry and education, but we also needed to add the component of conservation groups and education from outside of our community, so that we had a whole complete circle of education, industry folks, and conservation.
Working with the Darrington Collaborative really gives us it's like a win-win-win. So from a conservation community perspective, we're really interested in restoration in our forests and making sure that we put them on a trajectory that's going to be really resilient into the future. Through the work that
by providing opportunities to our youth builds resilience in the youth as well. The main goals of the collaborative are to boost the health of the community and ecosystems in the Darrington Ranger District, Darrington area.
My name's Dan Rankin. I've lived in Darrington all my life. I've been mayor of Darrington. This is my 8th year. I was the mayor here in 2014 during the SR 530 landslide. And that's kind of where this journey into collaboration got its start. The creation of the Darrington Collaborative was extremely important in how this community went forward. It was really important to not only involve community members like the timber industry and education, but we also needed to add the component of conservation groups and education from outside of our community, so that we had a whole complete circle of education, industry folks, and conservation.
Working with the Darrington Collaborative really gives us it's like a win-win-win. So from a conservation community perspective, we're really interested in restoration in our forests and making sure that we put them on a trajectory that's going to be really resilient into the future. Through the work that we're doing in the woods, we're putting logs on trucks that go to the mill, and so that helps the timber industry locally, because we're able to focus those projects in and around Darrington and keep the product in the community at the local mill. And third, we're able to engage just larger economic benefits in the community, including engaging kids in addition to that through STEM, getting kids outside doing monitoring projects, and all of that just really connects the Darrington community to the forests that surround them and helps us improve the health of the forest.
For centuries, Washington Wild and other conservation organizations have been at odds with timber interests and local logging towns. And the Darrington Collaborative gives us a unique opportunity to actually find common ground. One of the unique things about a forest collaborative is that it allows us to work on a stewardship contract. When we do a timber sale, we are able to offer capacity to the Forest Service to do either expedite a sale or do a new sale. Secondly, the funds from that restoration thinning actually stay here locally on the forest instead of going to the Treasury Department in Washington, D.C. And thirdly, those funds can then be used to actually support aquatic restoration projects and other priority fish passage projects on the forest locally.
So the collaborative was kind of established to go, how can we get the Forest Service to, one, get some timber up here to the community and to the mill, and then second, how can we work together as the collaborative with getting better water quality, getting a better watershed, getting some fish restoration, all the things that Hampton likes, everybody likes. And so if we can do both of those, I think that's a win for everybody.
A unique portion of the Darrington Collaborative is the STEM component. You don't see this happening everywhere, and it's very important for our future. What you see with STEM, oftentimes you think about technology, you think about robotics, you don't think about the natural world. And what STEM really fosters is that critical thinking and creative mindset of how do we solve problems, how do we invest in our future and our youth, and we really want to bring that forth to the forest. So what we're looking at doing is giving back to our youth, providing them the opportunity to think creatively about their future and invest in their problem-solving skills, and also have a knowledge of the forest so they can manage it for future generations.
In a time when our world is very divided, we find incredible opportunities when people actually sit down and talk to each other. And I think that's what's happened with the Darrington Collaborative. People have come together from the environmental community and conservation, industry, local community to bring people together, come up with solutions to help make sure that we have healthy forests, healthy waterways, make sure our communities are strong and that our children have incredible opportunities. And it's so great to see that happening right here in our community with the Darrington Collaborative.
All right, Dan, I'm going to pass it over to you now.
Okay, thank you. So before we get started, I'd like to introduce, if you could screen share the list of our collaborative membership. I'd like to introduce the collaborative and who our members are. You saw a few of them in the video. And so collaborative members, just your name and who you represent. You know the drill. And so let's see how that goes.
And I don't have a list to share, but we'll go down the list of participants.
Okay, you fly.
Include that in the PowerPoint. So why don't we start with Brenda?
So I am not officially a member of the Darrington Collaborative, but my name is Brenda Medina. I will be helping out with the question and answers and admitting folks to the meeting today, and I work for the Wilderness Society.
Thanks, Brenda. I wanted to make sure people knew that they were talking to you and not me as your host right now. So we had Dan, let's go to Tom.
Yeah, so Tom Uniak, Executive Director for Washington Wild, and I'm a member of the Darrington Collaborative.
Thanks, Tom. Angelina?
Hey everybody, I'm Angelina Price and I'm the Collaborative Forestry Manager for Hampton Lumber, and I'm based out of Darrington. I cover the state, and I'm a proxy for Tim.
Thanks, Angelina. Megan?
Hi, I'm Megan Brazel. I'm the Washington State Director for the Wilderness Society based out of Seattle, and I am a member of the Collaborative.
Thanks, Megan. Paul? Paul, you're on mute.
You muted me. So, Paul Wagner, President at Atterbury Consultants, consulting forester, member of the collaborative and Society of American Foresters.
Thanks, Paul. And Tim.
Hi, my name's Tim Johnson, plant manager at Hampton Lumber Darrington. Been on the collaborative for about 3 years and really enjoy it.
Thanks, Tim. Is there anyone on the phone that I missed? Going down the list of participants, but phone numbers don't have names attached.
Okay, Sally, would you go down the rest of the list? I know that. Let's see. Let me attempt. You can pick up the ones that I miss. As I said before, my co-chair is John Owen with the Pew Charitable Trust. Oak Rankin is with Glacier Peak Institute. Mike Town is with Tesla STEM School in Redmond. He is also part of our education branch. Tom O'Keefe is with American Whitewater. Missing.
Steve?
Go ahead.
Steve Skagland?
Yes, Steve Skagland is a local Darrington contract logger. He has Three Rivers as part owners in Three Rivers cutting, and they do a lot of contract logging throughout this region.
And then John Owens.
And I did John Owen in the very beginning.
In my list. I was trying to track you. Thanks, Dan. Continue now.
And so that's the membership of the steering committee for the Darrington Collaborative. As we said, we kind of got our start gathering together in 2014, and we officially launched ourselves in July. Just actually, let's see, almost exactly 5 years ago. There's another membership facet to this group. We have non-voting members. The Soxhawtl tribe has a non-voting membership, as well as Governor Jay Inslee, our Congresswoman from the 1st Congressional District, Susan Delbene, and of course Senator Murray. And let's see, I'm not going to go into our accomplishments, but that's kind of who we are. I'd like you to introduce Greta Smith. She is the new district ranger at the Darrington Ranger District. She got here in August of last year and has been a very key part of the collaborative as we move forward into the North Fork Stille project we'll be hearing about in a little bit later. So Greta, do you want to let us in on who you are and where you want to go?
Good evening, everyone. Yes, I can't believe it's almost been a year already. It feels like I just started last week. So time flies. Yeah, so I was asked to kind of provide a background of myself, and then to talk a little bit about what I think the Forest Service and the collaborative can bring to the table. So I'll answer those 3 questions. A little bit about myself. I grew up in Western Washington and left Western Washington as soon as I finished college. And I got a degree in natural resource management, a master's degree, and then proceeded to not use it for a couple of years. So I graduated in 2008, right at the economy crash. And so I feel this is relevant information because I feel like we're going through this as a community again. And this is really coloring my experience as a district ranger and how I can work with the community during these challenging and just different times. I remember being a young student out of college and not being able to get a job for a couple of years. And when I did get a job, it was probably one of the most meaningful moments in my life. I started out as a technician for the Forest Service, a seasonal employee. I got paid to hike. It was amazing. And then from there, I've moved on to the Army Corps of Engineers and worked for them as a NEPA planner. And definitely a different experience. You definitely learn about the environmental regulation side of things. It's quite a bit different than how the Forest Service approaches management of their resources and their NEPA process. I moved back to the Forest Service about 5 years ago as a NEPA planner down in Southern Oregon. And my husband and I decided it was time to come home last year. And so when I saw this job open up as a district ranger, I thought, yeah, there's no way in hell I'm gonna get that job. But here I am. So, you know, I'm really stoked to be here. I'm still learning a lot about the Darrington district. It's 400,000 plus acres of land that we need to be carefully managing and appropriately using and working with the public on. And so that's a continual daily lesson that I'm learning. And I think you'll find with my communication style, I am not a politician. And I ask, you know, that you guys speak directly to me as I try to speak with you. What you hear is what you get. So yeah, that's a little bit about who I am. You know, in my past 10 years of being a NEPA planner, I've been engaged on several different collaboratives. I was on the collaborative for the Columbia River, one of the longest running collaboratives in the nation. I believe it was 25 years by the time I had left the agency. And the one thing about that collaborative that's not true for this collaborative is you guys exhibit a sense of trust with each other. And I would say that this collaborative has the most amount of trust amongst its team members that I have seen across 4 different collaboratives. And so that is incredible. I remember working on the Columbia River collaborative, and there was a hesitancy to share information, to share data. And that really kind of colored my experience, because in order for us to make informed decisions on the landscape, we need to be able to understand what other people are working with. We need to be able to understand what's driving their values. And so when there's a lack of trust, when there's a hesitancy to share data, that really it limits forward progress. I don't see that with you guys. This is one of the best performing collaboratives that I've been on, and I've been on 4. And I'm just really looking forward to continuing the dialogue and discussion. You know, this collaborative is different in that it was born out of tragedy, and I recognize that. And I think because of that, there's a stronger sense of community that may not be felt in other collaboratives. I think at the end of the day, all of us are bringing values that have some common tangent. And I think that common tangent is us just wanting to do good for the community and to do good for each other. And I think when we approach the challenges and the issues that we look at, we can come to a general idea of what needs to happen out there on the landscape. So I think that kind of answers what I think the Forest Service brings to the collaborative and what I can bring to you. I'm really looking forward to this next year. I'm really hoping that this next year we can start looking at the North Fork Stillaguamish watershed and the Lower Sauk River watershed. I think there's a lot of opportunity out there. And I think we all have a lot of good ideas that we just want to see happen. And so I really see myself as the facilitator to try and make that happen and work with you guys to understand what your vision is and to work through the NEPA process. So I think that's my role. And if you guys see or think differently, please let me know, and I'd be happy to learn from you on that. We also have a new forest supervisor who started. Her name is Jody Wheel. She comes from BLM. She's coming from Arizona. She just moved up here this last week. And so I'm hoping to get her up to speed and to really impress upon her the importance of the Darrington Collaborative for the Mount Baker Snoqualmie National Forest. You guys are doing work that's beyond the Darrington community, and I want to recognize that and I want to support it. I also want to make sure that I get you in the right, lined up with the right people. And so if there's something that I can do for you, just let me know. If there's something that I need to communicate up to Jody, please let me know. You know, my job is to serve the public, and in serving the public, that means I'm serving you guys. So, thank you. Anybody have any questions, comments, concerns?
Thank you, Greta.
So Megan, do you want to take on the next one?
Yes, I'm happy to. Do we have pictures associated with this?
We do. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to switch to sharing it in Adobe, which sometimes crashes on me. So if it does, I'm sorry, but I think you'll be able to see it better. Here we go. Share screen. Here.
All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Siegelson 1 project, which was the first project that our collaborative undertook after we formed in 2015. It took 2 years to complete, but I would also like to point out that, you know, it's just a testament to the amount of trust that we were able to build really quickly in our collaborative, that, you know, to go from zero to having a project developed in 2 years, including all of the relationship and trust building that has to happen for that to come together, was pretty awesome to see. The project was in the North Fork Stillaguamish watershed. It had initially, it had been replanted after it was initially harvested, or most recently harvested in 1955. The west half had burned after that harvest and was replanted with Doug fir. The east half was replanted with western hemlock, a silver fir mix with a little bit of Doug fir in there. It was small, it was about 70 acres. We ran it as a categorical exclusion because of the size. We were able to run it that way, and by running it as a categorical exclusion, it meant that we were able to expedite the planning process to get implementation out on the project. So we sold it to Hampton, or not we, the Forest Service sold it to Hampton in October of 2017. It was harvested in 2018 and 2019, and it sent just over 12,000 tons of saw logs to the Hampton Mill in Darrington, so really delivering on that promise and goal of providing lumber to the local mill and supporting the local community in that way. And then another piece that, you know, coming from the conservation community was really interesting to me was that we ran it as a stewardship sale, which is just a contracting mechanism within the Forest Service that allowed us to take the receipts, the money from the timber that was sold, and actually use that to fund aquatic restoration in the Clear Creek watershed, which Paul Wagner is going to talk about in just a minute. So those are some of the highlights, you can see there that we did a field tour with Congresswoman Del Bene and her staff and the Forest Service. I was just up there, what was that, like a year ago? Some of us went up to look at post-treatment stands. It looked really good. So I think, you know, we learned some things on it for sure that we took into our next project, Siegelson 2, that Tom will talk about in a few minutes. But really to be able in such a short time to build the trust that's needed among diverse perspectives to develop a project. Yes, it was small. You know, Greta has already mentioned we have interest in moving to the landscape scale and working in the North Fork Stille watershed. But in terms of a place to really kind of test out the trust that we had built and the common ground and the zone of agreement, it was a really important learning opportunity for us, and also, you know, learning about what makes sales economically feasible for the mill, things that, you know, someone like me doesn't necessarily know about until we get into projects like this. So I felt like it was a really positive experience for the collaborative. Again, like it wasn't 100% smooth, but we learned a lot and are continuing to learn and take that into new projects. So I'll stop there. I don't know if anyone else on the collaborative wants to speak to Siegelson 1 before we turn it over to Paul to talk about Clear Creek. Sounds like no questions. So I'll hand it over to you, Paul. I think you're still on mute at the moment.
Yeah, so I popped off there. Start off with my backdrop is actually part of Siegelson 1 as well, but the stewardship portion of it was on the Clear Creek.
We kind of lost your audio, Paul.
You may have to call in, Paul.
I think we just lost Paul entirely.
So I'll try to pick up where Paul left off. Our stewardship project was, you know, kind of a little bit far away from the site in which the timber sale was on. It was Clear Creek, and it was an aquatics project where the funding from the funds that were generated from the timber sale went into culvert replacement and watershed improvements on the Clear Creek road system. And as much as you can see in the pictures, it was much needed restoration in a watershed that is a tributary of the Sauk River. And the lower end of it has a pretty neat little run of adromous fish species in it. And so this project was twofold. It captured and helped with aquatic restoration, but it also included through that process, it included roadbed restoration, which is a access road for several different recreational opportunities, mostly rock climbing and several different trailheads. Is Paul back with us yet? Okay. Does anybody else from the collaborative have anything to add that I may have missed in that? I know Paul knows this project much better than any of us. We apologize.
Yeah, this is Tom Uniac. I'll just add a couple things, and then if Paul comes back, maybe we can fit him in to say a few words at the end. But the stewardship project was really also had the impact. It was aquatic restoration for some impacts where the road was failing in a number of places to the river. It was sediment, but it also happened to be a road that was really popular with local climbers and recreationists. And so that was really important and a kind of a fringe benefit for doing that. Also, I think ultimately there were probably, I think, more than a dozen culverts that were replaced and a lot of work that was done. And there are still additional retained receipts that are kind of the Forest Service is holding that we can work to identify additional stewardship projects going forward. So I'll end with that, and then I can talk about Siegelson 2 now, if that's where we are.
Sure.
So after Siegelson 1, what should come next but Siegelson 2? I think we'll probably work on getting more creative about how we name our projects in the future, but nonetheless, this was a similar project in a similar area as Siegelson 1. It was a 70-acre project, and it was also on a categorical exclusion under NEPA. So smaller project than maybe some. This was a second growth stands that were replanted in 59 or 1961. So we're talking about a 60-year-old stand age that was second growth. And the goal here, as in Siegelson 1, was to do a thinning to actually, take out some of the smaller trees, leave some of the bigger trees, and kind of expedite a more complex stand. One of the photos you'll see shows that this was a pretty dense, kind of overstocked forest, and we're looking for that restoration benefit. But as we do that, these size trees we're taking out are, number one, economic and commercial. And going through a tour at the Hampton Mill, I learned that these are kind of the adolescent type trees that really are exactly what the mill's looking for, which is kind of a great synergy. So this was sold in September 2019 to Sierra Pacific Industries, and it will be harvested next season in 2021. And again, when we do this as a stewardship, the big benefit is that we get funds to stay on the forest that can be used for aquatic restoration, and the focus of those kind of retained receipts are going to be a road crossing adjacent to the project, which had blown out. So kind of restoring that culvert and stopping the aquatic risk and damage that's happening from that, which is the type of thing that the Forest Service, just doesn't have the budget or the funds to actually take care of. So this is kind of a high priority. The other thing about this sale, and what I wanted to mention here, was Washington Department of Natural Resources. So two things. Number one is, starting with this sale and with other sales we've been working on, the DNR has a grant program that collaboratives are able to access. And we've been fortunate enough to get a series of grants from the DNR over the last 3 years, which are really significant and have really kind of allowed the collaborative to kind of do this work. And so we're really appreciative of that opportunity. In fact, Sally, our coordinator, is with us. She's the first coordinator we've been able to hire, and that is a direct result of that grant program from DNR. Secondly, this sale is unique because this is an example not only of the collaborative helping the Forest Service with some of the capacity issues they have to get these kind of sales out the door and moving forward, but also the DNR has a Good Neighbor Authority program. And I'm going to let Mark and Brian kind of briefly explain what that is. But they were involved in doing all the contracting for this once we did our pre-sale work. So for the Forest Service, which again really helped with the capacity that the Forest Service has to do. And so this was not only a stewardship sale with the collaborative, but also a Good Neighbor Authority sale with Washington State DNR. So I think with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brian Bailey or Mark Arneson. You guys can choose, Emerson, you can choose who wants to go and talk about what's GNA and then how you guys interacted with us in the Forest Service on this Siegelson 2.
Okay, thanks, Tom. This is Brian Bailey. I'll jump in and talk a little bit about GNA, and then Mark can talk about the specifics of Siegelson 2, if you guys would like. A little bit about me. I'm the implementation and planning lead for DNR's Federal Lands Program, and that's the program that does the GNA work for DNR. I work statewide, so I have my hands a little bit on all the GNA projects, but I work with the Forest Service, our partners, staff, collaboratives, all over the state, and work a lot with our staff that we have based on the forest, like Mark Arneson, who's actually kind of coordinating, getting the projects done, building relationships with the communities in the forest locally. Now, like GNA, most of you probably know, but just like real high level recap for those who don't hear it as often as I do. GNA is an authority that was granted by Congress that allows state agencies to work with federal land management agencies in their states. So like the National Forest and the Bureau of Land Management. It makes sense that if DNR wants to see some restoration work done on the forest, and Forest Service also wants to see that done, but doesn't have the capacity to do it, makes sense that DNR could come in and get it done. And that's what GNA enables. It's where that overlap of that Venn diagram occurs, that the GNA really takes roots. Through this authority, DNR can help out in a couple of ways. We can just provide some staff to go out and assist Forest Service. Staff themselves getting a project done on time. We can also just kind of take a project on ourselves, and that means going out there doing the layout, but doing the layout pretty much the DNR way, using our contracts, like Tom said. There's a lot of advantages like that. If they're a lot easier, I think, for purchasers to work with. We can get them out kind of quick. One thing with Siegelson is, by the time the project came to the GNA program at DNR, we didn't have a lot of time to put the contract together and get it out. But with state mechanisms, we were able to get a pretty fast turnaround on that. And in the type of work we do in this program, Siegelson 2 is a perfect example of restoration thinnings, but we also do a lot of aquatic passage improvements that you guys have been talking about. And Siegelson 2's got some of those built into it, like road fixes, decommissioning, monitoring work. Those are projects that we have going on across the state now. We work on every national forest, except the Umatilla, but I think we're going to be getting there soon too. Like it's DNR and it's the Forest Service. That's where signatures occur and the official agreement lies. But we work a lot with partners and collaboratives. There's so much work to be done that it's hard to prioritize, and there's so much good work that's already been started that we don't want to start from scratch. Working with you guys, finding out what's out there and what just needs some hands or resources to get accomplished is really what we're all about. So there's been a lot of examples of just that. Siegelson 2, perfect. I think you guys wanted some of the resources, putting the contract together and the personnel to go out there and finish laying it out and complying it once it gets sold. On the GP, one of the collaboratives down there, the Pinchot Partners, got one of the grants you guys are talking about and actually was able to hire a GNA staff member to lay out a project down there. So that was almost all on the collaborative. On the Olympic, we've taken on a sale very similar to Siegelson 2. So these avenues to work together outside of just DNR and the Forest Service, but bringing in other partners and the collaboratives it's an extremely fruitful tool that I know we're going to do a lot more with. I'm excited about that. North Fork, Stillway, Snookware, stand exams. That's just a taste of what we can do. That was my really quick GNA overview. and then I'll pass it back to you guys. And Mark and I happy to kind of talk about the specific project or GNA in general.
Hi, everybody. It's Mark. So I work for the Department of Natural Resources here in the Northwest region. I apologize for my video being out. My internet connection isn't super great out here. So hopefully you can still hear me okay. We were brought in, a tremendous amount of work had been done on this project. We kind of came in near the end to help bring it across the finish line. What we were able to lend to the project was engineering expertise, our cruising processes, our appraisal processes, and our contracting work. They're simplified when compared back to Forest Service, but I think the end products of both agencies are very similar. So while ours looks different, feels different, they're getting to the same goal. Our staff that are out on the ground that did the work to finish this up and then will be complying the project are used to working in the area, used to working with the local contractors, used to working with the mills. So we can leverage all those partnerships and resources that we have to make this project more successful coming to next summer. That's kind of basically it. We just used the final touches to bring this great project to where we're at now.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Brian. I don't know, Sally, do we want to entertain questions at this time, or do we just move on to North Fork Stille Landscape Project?
We're going to do questions at the end, so we'll pass it on to Angelina.
Well, I'm going to introduce that. So, you know, we talk a lot about the categorical exclusion in the 70 acres. And before the DNR granting process came along, the path forward for a very small but nimble collaborative here in Darrington, the path forward involved, at the time, we had, I think, 9 categorical exclusions on the table. We were going to be doing those as stewardship projects, but we were going to try to work with the Forest Service to hold back some of those stewardship funding so that we could introduce a planning project on a landscape scale. And when the DNR, Department of Natural Resources, started to open up that granting opportunity, that unveiled an opportunity for the collaborative to move a little bit more quickly to a landscape size project. And so through a long process, we chose the North Fork Stille landscape. And that's where we're at today. And so now I'm going to introduce Angelina. Thank you, Angelina.
Thanks, Dan. So I'll talk a little bit about this project, and the reason that I'd be the one to talk about it is because I worked on the grant with the DNR for this project, and it, you know, the grant process was new to us 2 years ago. We've now gone through a second grant process, and we're learning a lot. But essentially, this project is the collaborative's proposed vegetation management project on the North Fork Still-Squamish watershed. It's approximately 30,000 acres. You've heard today already that we started at that 70-acre categorical exclusion level, and with the help of DNR through the grant process and through the great work that we've done together as a collaborative to build trust and to do those smaller test projects, we're actually able to bump up to the landscape scale. So when we're talking about landscape, we're talking about an entire watershed that you're looking at in planning. And we're analyzing an area with the Forest Service over that landscape or watershed scale. So the Mount Baker Snoqualmie actually started investing in landscape scale vegetation management projects back in 2014 with the Hanson Creek project. They then moved into the Snoquera project down in the South Fork Stille in the Verlot area.
the Nooksack project, which is just finished its scoping period up on the north end. And we are in the planning process doing the pre-NEPA or pre-National Environmental Policy Act work for the North Fork Stillaguamish. So landscape scale projects are meant to enhance forest stand structure, something that Tom mentioned before, to accelerate old growth characteristics and enhance vegetation diversity in riparian areas or riparian reserves, as well as to promote stand resiliency. So similar to your garden, where you weed out your carrots and you pluck the smaller ones, we are looking to pluck the smaller trees so that those other trees can grow nice and big and they can be healthier. It's similar to that whole process of weeding in your garden to make sure that things are resilient to disease, to insect, to wildfire, and to climate change. The same principles that you find in your garden stand true for forest stands. So as I mentioned, the National Environmental Policy Act requires that analysis be done on any federal project on federal land or federally funded projects. And they're also required for these forest and aquatic restoration projects that the collaborative helps with. So before the NEPA process happens, the big analysis that the forest will have to do, comes the pre-NEPA survey process. And that's sort of the work that the collaborative has really been helping with. Can you go to the next slide for me, Sally? So in order to accomplish the pre-NEPA survey work that needed to happen, we applied for this grant through the DNR. And essentially we want to supplement the pre-NEPA work for a handful of different items. And I'll talk about those. Those are covering different resources that the forest doesn't quite have capacity for. And what will happen is we'll provide baseline data that the specialists at the forest will then use to do their NEPA analysis for the North Fork Stilly project. So as I mentioned, we actually use this funding to hire contractors to do the work. And why we do that is because the Forest Service, you know, for about 6 months or more now hasn't had a pre-sales forester. They only have one silviculturist for the whole forest. They have one engineer for the whole forest, and they have very limited capacity to do all of the things on their program of work. And so we are, as a collaborative, building that additional capacity by hiring out some of those things. And it's overseen by the forest, and all of the work is checked by the forest, but it provides the forest the ability to continue to do the great work that is on their program and add additional projects such as the North Fork Stilly. So eventual restoration projects in that North Fork Stilly project area would improve tree species biodiversity and reduce tree density and fuel load. So as I mentioned, that thinning out to make sure that things are big and healthy. It would provide economic benefits by providing timber sales in the local Darrington Ranger District area, as well as road maintenance opportunities for local contractors. As we mentioned before, stewardship projects and G&A projects, or Good Neighbor Authority projects, through the stewardship authority with the collaborative and through that Good Neighbor Authority program, we're able to do further aquatic habitat restoration projects, and we can then benefit water quality. This would benefit not only the town of Darrington, but surrounding communities such as Arlington and Oso, Concrete, Rockport, and Marble Mount. The way that those communities would be benefited would be access to cultural and recreational activities like hiking, mountain biking, like we mentioned on the Clear Creek Road, foraging, getting out and mushrooming, or if you're a huckleberry picker, biking, hunting, fishing, all of the wonderful things associated with public and cultural recreational activities and traditional properties. And it also has public health benefits associated with community forestry. There are studies that show that well-being is closely associated to the amount of time you spend in nature, and it is really important for these communities in rural areas to have that sense of place, and we bring that through these projects. Next slide, please. So this is one of the field tours. We were out in the oh, if you could go back just a hair there for me. Show the picture of us all out there together, Sally. we're actually out in the North Fork Stillaguamish watershed working on that Siegelson 2 project area. So what we hadn't mentioned before is that Siegelson Ridge area is within the overall North Fork Stilly watershed. So we've been sort of testing and working together in that watershed already. So we're kind of queued up for working together for fully. And this was one of the tours that we did. The tribe was there. We had Hampton foresters out there. We've got all of the collaborative folks there. And the DNR. Next slide, please. So again, I mentioned that we're doing pre-NEPA survey work. Well, what does that mean? What are we really doing out there? Well, we've hired Roots Forestry out of Arlington, and Matt Grund is on the line here today to actually do road inventories. So the goal of that is to document the general road condition throughout the planning or analysis area and determine any necessary road repairs that would have to happen before hauling could occur, or maintenance on all the project area roads. And I think if I'm right, in this 30,000 acre analysis area, we're looking at about 98 miles of road that Roots is going to be looking at for us. Roots is also being hired through that DNR grant program funding to do stand exams, and stand exams actually provide the baseline forest information that's used to develop the forest management prescriptions. And what I mean by that is taking a look at the condition of the forest stand, the timber stand, and determining what the desired future condition is versus the historic range of variability, and determining what type of treatment should occur on that stand. So the prescription is actually the written treatment for the stand. And this provides essential information on maintenance and reconstruction needed for the proposed vegetation management projects, getting the road open again, closed roads, reopening, or improving and upgrading roads and culverts, like you see in the bottom picture there, in order to improve the water quality, in order to haul on those roads, and in order to get the equipment in and out of there safely while mitigating impacts to resources. Did I have another slide? Perfect. So one other item that we were able to get covered, this is another place where the forest is limited in their staffing, is cultural resources. So archaeology and cultural resources also have to be surveyed for. And the Washington State Historic Preservation Office actually requires cultural resource surveys be done on any federally planned project, whether it's the Forest Service or the Bureau of Land Management. And the goal of these is to visit all of the locations within the planning area and assess any of the impacts to potential cultural properties. And then they could flag those areas so that we can mitigate and stay out of those and avoid them. And this is to secure compliance with the cultural criteria which is outlined in Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. And there's some more information there if you're interested. So those are sort of the requirements we're going to be meeting prior to even starting any sort of analysis. All of these things have to occur. Now, this isn't all that's on the list. Wildlife survey have to be done. They have to do search for fish in the streams and determine what type of fish are there, and mitigations for any type of species that are found, whether that's wildlife or fish, or invasive species have to be treated before you can go in and do any road work. So looking for threatened and endangered plant species is another thing that has to be done. There's a whole list of the forest has to actually do before they ever even start writing an analysis. And then once they get into the analysis, they write about the impacts to those resources and how they can mitigate or minimize or avoid impacts, adverse impacts to those, or how those resources can be beneficially impacted by the project. So lots of things going in the background that help. I think kind of describing some of this will help you to understand that the glacial pace is for a reason. Takes a long time to do all of this. By getting this in our grant, we were actually able to speed the process up. All of this work that we're doing this field season is going to speed the project by a whole year, because otherwise it would have been pushed back to the next field season before we get out on the ground and start doing survey work. And I think that was my last slide. Perfect. So we're going to move into the questions section, which is good. You might have questions for me. So I'll unmute here. If folks have questions, you just hit the chat icon at the bottom of your screen, and that will pop up a chat box for you, and you can type questions directly to Brenda, who is hosting, and then she might field them to us or provide an answer for you.
Yeah, so before we get into the questions, Greta does have some updates regarding the North Fork Stilly project, so I'll give her an opportunity to do that as folks get a chance to write their questions in the chat.
Thanks for the background, and I'm, I'm really looking forward to what we can bring forward with the North Fork Stilly project, but I think what I need to do for you guys is be open about where we're at as a forest and how we're moving forward with NEPA and how we're moving forward with the changes that we have internally. We're currently we're currently in the process of hiring a new silviculturist. I don't know how long that process takes. It can be anywhere as short as 2 months to as long as 6 months. And I'm hoping that it's shorter rather than longer. Additionally, today we just found out that our pre-sale crew lead has taken a job elsewhere. And so we're looking at backfilling that position as well. You've already mentioned the gaps in the engineering department. I think what I just want to tell you is there's no lack of desire to do this work. I think we all want to see this work happen. And I'm really appreciative that we've got DNR to help us out and you guys to help us out. There's the internal process that we have to work through as well. We're also working through the ESA process. The Fish and Wildlife Agency and the National Marine Fisheries Service Agency are also short-staffed. And so when they're looking at consultation, and if we go to consultation with these projects, this may be a little further out than what we had initially anticipated a few years ago. My hope is that we can dialogue with the agencies and get onto the docket early. As soon as I know more about what that looks like, I'll let you guys know.
Great, thank you, Greta. I did see somebody raise their hand, but if folks have a chance to write in the chat, I will let Doug ask his question. If you want to unmute yourself, take it away.
Oh, thank you very much. I was, it was probably taking me a few minutes to write my question. Quick couple of comments, if you'll indulge me, and then I'll get to the question. So first, thanks to all the collaborative members. I should have said right away, I did earlier, but I work for Hampton Lumber. I work with Tim and Angelina, and then Chris McCall and Ryder Bricker, foresters who work out of Darrington there. So thank you very much, for the work that, the collaborative members and all the supporters, have accomplished to date. Obviously, the interest and commitment that collaborative has for the Darrington mill there was exhibited in the videos and the comments. So thank you for that. So a bit of a comment and question for Gretchen, I think, maybe to follow up on what you just added in there at the end, Gretchen. the collaborative has a tremendous amount of ability to influence and support the services work. But what we've seen in other regions and forests is really the forest and district leadership are really what make the difference in what a forest can accomplish. And in this case, the Darrington Collaborative is certainly in a position to provide, I think, as much support. I know Hampton's committed to it, providing as much support as they possibly can to the service. And it's clear that everybody recognizes there's a lack of capacity and resources. So my question is simply, what can the collaborative and Hampton specifically do beyond the participation that we're trying to accomplish, to date? What can we do to help the leadership address those capacity issues that you have? Thanks.
Thank you for that support. I don't know what the answer is now, and I'm thinking through it. I'm trying to rack my brain. I think what we just need to have is the dialogue with the services. We will be having a discussion with the regional office next week, the leader of the consultation group out of the regional office. And I will be asking some very specific questions about how we can better coordinate our work with the services and support their lack of capacity. If you guys feel that there's a question that you want me to ask on the collaborative behalf to the regional office, I would certainly like to take it forward. We're not the only forest in this situation. You're absolutely right. My hope with this landscape project, and while we could have considered the 70-acre CE, it most likely would have gone to consultation. And so my hope with this landscape project is, yes, we'll get a consultation, but we'll have a broader scale that we can apply it to and be able to conduct that review in the same amount of time. So it's a bigger bang for the buck, essentially. Let me get back to you on that, Doug. I want to make sure that I communicate to the regional office and to the services that there is a desire from the community and the collaborative to provide support to the agencies. And I'd like to reiterate my ask that if you guys have any questions that you want me to ask of the regional office ESA team, please feel free to email it to me.
Thanks, Gretchen.
Can I hop in here as well? So I work with collaboratives across the state of Washington, and one of the things that I've seen on the North Central Washington Forest Health Collaborative out of the Okanagan-Wenatchee on the North Zone is that the collaborative actually came together. It was the DNR specifically, but through the collaborative, they were actually able to hire a position in the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service specifically for consultation on collaborative projects on the Okanagan-Wenatchee. And I think that might be a really good follow-up for us to do with the Oka-Wen, and to learn what that process looks like and what we would need to do to put ourselves in the same sort of boat, as it were, in order to do something like that, because I know that that's one of the things that we've not yet touched on, and it can make a huge difference for us on the MBS.
Go ahead, Gretchen. You're unmuted.
Yeah, absolutely. That is something that we have been talking with the services about, and I think it is an option that they are considering. But I can bring it forward again. The Oka Wind is operating out of a different service office than the Mount Baker Snoqualmie. The Oka Wind is operating out of the Yakima office while we operate out of the Lacey office, and they have different capacity.
I'd like to kind of get back to some of the folks that have joined us this evening. Is this format working for folks? We really appreciate feedback on what directions we're going on and how we're operating as a collaborative, and making sure that not only developing capacity for the Forest Service, but keeping in mind our conservation and timber affiliates as well. So eager to hear questions or comments about what we're up to. They're really important to us, and continue to help us guide, how our actions go forward.
So we did have a question and a comment. Sorry, the train was passing by. So, so the comment was, I want to compliment the collaborative for being able to develop the trust among members to allow projects to succeed. Getting grants and hiring contractors outside of the Forest Service is a good way to supplement the workforce. And the question is, can the silvicultural activities or pre-sale also be contracted? And I guess that question may be directed towards Greta.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Brenda, it
Sure.
might be easier to type it to.
Oh, got it. Okay, let me do that.
Yeah, that's a technical question. To a certain extent, yes. For any of the prescription to be formally approved by the Forest Service, it has to be approved by a certified silviculturist. And their certified silviculturist has to be certified by the Forest Service standards. And so right now we're working through the questions of, okay, well, how much work can we get done without a certified silviculturist? Can we bring on a contracted silviculturist to write the prescription, for example, and then we submit it to the forest silviculturist and they can review the prescription and approve it or make changes as needed. And the pre-sale, yes, we're looking at we are in a tight spot with the pre-sale crew right now, especially with another person leaving. We're looking at different avenues for what it means to bring on a pre-sale crew. Are we going to do a temp pre-sale crew? We're looking at all the avenues. And the person that can probably answer this question much better than I can is Dave Kipperweiser, and he is based out of the supervisor's office. So I can pass it forward and get an answer for you all if you'd like.
I'll hop in here too. The collaborative has been actually writing silvicultural prescriptions and doing the pre-sales layout in place of the forest, and then that's being sent up to the forest for review, like Greta mentioned. And so Resilient Forestry, actually Sean Geronimo is on the line. Resilient Forestry has been doing a lot of that work for us. I don't know if Sean, you wanted to add anything?
Mm-hmm. I think one of the challenges that we're going to run into right now is the silviculturist that had left was also a COR representative. And so every contract that we manage as a Forest Service has to be supervised by a COR. And right now, the only COR that we have is Dave Kendrick. He's doing this work for the entire forest. And so it's how do we maximize his time? And also, do we need to bring on another COR to manage that contract?
Thank you. I don't see any additional questions in the chat. We'll give it another minute or so, or you can also raise your hand, and you use that through the participant option, and you are able to use the little hand button to raise your hand.
There's no silly questions. We would love to hear from you. We'd love to talk with you. That's what this is about. So feel free to ask. Also, there's other folks on the line that have not yet spoke that have been active participants in collaboration with us. Bill from SBI is on the line. SPI, again, bought Siegelson 2. He might have something that he's thinking. Potentially, it looks like we may have lost Sean, but I'd welcome anybody to share any thoughts, comments, questions, or just positive shout outs at this time as well. It'd be interesting also to hear from Josh or Janine, as they are coordinators on other collaboratives in the state.
Well, this is Bill Turner. Since you shouted me out, I guess I'll answer Angelina. I'm with Sierra Pacific, and we did buy Siegelson 2. One, I've not been to one of your meetings before. I know Zoom is awkward, but you guys transmitted a lot of information. One of the things you've done very well, as you said, is break down the barriers and develop that trust. That's huge. I've been involved with other collaboratives, and it doesn't happen easily. You all have to come in with that open mind, and I thank you for that. But your achievements reflect that. So that's what's coming along. And in order to get the NEPA done with categorical exclusions, that is a picture of trust, because otherwise you're going to have to do the bigger NEPA documents that may not go through because somebody's going to protest. One, the other then question, or like Doug had offered, that's what I was thinking along the whole time. If anybody in the collaborative would like us to participate at any level, at any time, we would be happy to. I don't want to rock the boat because you guys are doing great or add a complexity. But we're always willing to share because we have adjacent lands in that area, as well as processing them. And it all comes to into the marketplace and helps us all, and we all recreate in the place. So thank you again.
Thanks, Bill. Anybody else? No pressure. Go ahead, Janine. I'll unmute you.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Janine Ritchie. I am the coordinator for the Pinchot Partners down on the Cowlitz Valley Ranger District of the Gifford Pinchot. And since Angelina gave me a shout out too, I just thought I'd, pop up and say hi. I'm just kind of joined to see what is going on in other collaboratives around the state. And so I appreciate you guys putting on this public meeting. And I know I'll speak for Josh a little bit. We both started our roles in March or April. So we're kind of new to these roles. And so for me, it's really just a great opportunity to see what's going on in other collaboratives and learn from each other. So thanks. It's a lot of really impressive stuff going on up in Darrington. So thanks for having me.
Sally, would you like to close us out?
Sure, thank you. Thanks everyone for coming tonight. Dan, if you have any last words, feel free to jump in here. But it's okay. It's okay to end early. That's fine. Thanks everyone for your participation and for joining us. If you do have any other questions that come up, we did record this and we'll post it to our website. So feel free to rewatch whenever you want to, and we'll be in touch with everyone. Thank you.
Well said, Sally. Thanks everybody for being here on a beautiful sunny Wednesday evening, and enjoy the rest of your night.
Nice to see you all. Thanks everybody for joining.
Brenda, can you be host before you